we're gonna hit a lot of people. I play this game on expert. It doesn't really change a lot in terms of the timing. The only things that really changes are that the enemies are more aggressive, and I'm gonna play as Guy because he's the best character. So the big change that this game had from the first two games in the series is they added the ability to dash. And dash attacks are very powerful in this game, so it's going to be a pretty regular thing for me to do that. In addition to just generally being some of the more powerful attacks, you can also cancel most attacks into running, which means that you can cancel dashing attacks into running and just do running strings forever. So yeah, that's kind of the majority of what you're going to be seeing here. In addition to the running mechanic, they also added special moves and a super move for every character. And Guy gets pretty good use out of his special move and his super. It's not really ever optimal to do them, but, well, it's not ever optimal to do his super, but his special is pretty good for finishing enemies when they're off screen because it kind of hits forward quite a bit further than Guy's dashing string can, so I'll use it periodically. The super, like I said, isn't really ever optimal to use for time, but because it does a lot of damage and because certain enemies, if you end up in a grab, it's hard to attack certain enemies, I'll use it like right there. So besides that, there's really not a whole lot of interesting stuff that changes from moment to moment. It's a lot of kind of reacting to enemies, trying to get them grouped together, and doing the dash strings. So anyway, here's the first boss. He's going to go much as the other sequence goes. I'm going to do a triple side change here. So when you grab an enemy, you're kind of stuck with them, but you can change sides by holding down and pressing jump. And doing that 3 times causes you to drop the enemy, which is a good way to change sides with them if they're near a corner, since otherwise they'd get pushed off screen and you wouldn't really be able to damage them anymore. Now there's a cutscene there, skip it by pressing start. Nothing too fancy. So there's weapons in this game, and most of them are just terribly useless. But this weapon right here is not. This is the hammer. We're going to use it in a second. So the hammer is a pretty silly weapon. It hits like 7 times for 6 damage a hit, which is about 75% of the health bar that you see visually. It's actually only slightly less damage than a super does. Another mechanic in this game that doesn't come up often, but you can actually jump or dash backwards by holding, if you hold the R button, you'll go into like a strafe mode where you can walk forward or backwards. And if you double tap back during that, you'll do the backdash. And backdash isn't horribly useful a lot of the time, but it is technically the fastest form of movement. You can't advance faster than the screen scrolls regardless, so a lot of times it's just irrelevant. But it also is completely invincible for the duration of the dash, so you can actually go through a lot of attacks by just backdashing with good timing, which doesn't come up a lot. It's an uncommon strategy to use. So this is the first route thing that we're gonna do. This game, depending on certain things that you do, you can end up going different ways. And the first instance of that is breaking that door leads us to this interior area. Now in this case, it's not really a big change. It mainly just skips the end of that fight that I started right before I broke the door, and it starts a little bit easier of a fight with this boss. Wow. Okay, so Call Man is a really annoying boss because if he wants to jump around, you cannot hit him. And he also has 2 of these maze in the fight, which are a pretty obnoxious enemy type. They can, much like Call Man, they can kind of flip out of stuff whenever they want. But once you get Call Man in the string, you can kind of just do the same thing as everybody else. Yeah, this game did have 2-player. Unfortunately, the 2-player functionality is not very good. This game is not terribly well optimized programming, as far as programming. So, if you play with 2 players, the game pretty constantly has slowdown. You'll kind of get a glimpse into that later. So this is round 3, and round 3 is where the routing things that I talked about a moment ago are really going to be more important. So the super input is forward roll to down attack. So it's pretty easy to do on accident in some cases. So in this section, I need to be very careful to make sure that I break that sign that I just did. It's actually a pretty common misconception that you're supposed to break all 4 of the panes of glass in this area to do this. But you really just have to break that one sign. So yeah, we're done with round 3. We broke the bus sign, so we're not going to wait for the bus. And that's the end of the round. It also completely skips having any kind of boss, and it brings us to an alternate stage 4. If we had followed that, this is not where we would have ended up. And this stage is significantly shorter than the round 4 you're intended to go to. So pretty drastic time savings from that one route choice. Okay. Andors in this game are actually rather passive, but every once in a while they'll throw you out of a setup. There's not really anything to do about it, it's just something that happens. Another advantage Guy has over the other characters is that a lot of his attacks actually kind of are low profile. So you can kind of go under certain things, certain punches. And then you've seen me probably use this jumping, spinning kick attack a lot. Dying doesn't really cost anything as long as I don't game over. I prefer to die as little as possible, but unfortunately, the way enemies kind of work in this game, you tend to, in a speedrun, just take some damage over time because you can't really control enemies very effectively while doing the most efficient forms of damage. So yeah, Fat Jacks, you can interrupt their charge pretty easily with a standing punch. Well, I haven't really talked about, so I've been talking about using, and obviously have been using the dash attacks pretty significantly. For Guy, it's, wow, okay. For Guy, it's pretty easy, you just double tap forward. So yeah, this is an example of why in a speedrun, maze, certain enemies, especially maze, can just be a big problem. There's not really anything that I did wrong there. It's just kind of, that's how the AI played out. If I was playing for just like a general clear or like trying to not die, I would handle maze much differently. I'd be using a lot more throws. But yeah, so sometimes I tried to throw a May into another May, and she just decided she wasn't having any of it. Again, enemies can just decide to not deal with the stuff you have to do. So, even though they have significantly less health than is really required to kill them with the supers, if Maya's at full health, I'll oftentimes super them just to make sure they're out of there as quickly as possible. Okay, so this section is actually another routing choice. You can go up or down here. The up direction has significantly fewer enemies total. But the thing you're going to notice here is this is one of a very rare set of circumstances in the game where they get 4 enemies on screen. It's a pretty common limitation in Super Nintendo beat-em-ups that they only have room for 3 enemy sprites. But by using only the exact same enemy with the same palette, they did some trickery and got a 4th enemy on screen. The game also lags pretty bad on that screen. You may or may not have noticed. So this is Drake. He can't get out of the corner when you do this setup, so it's kind of a pretty simple boss for Guy. Most characters have a similar loop, even though they don't have nearly as strong of a dash attack. Okay, so now we get a bonus stage. We get to stop the bulldozer. This section is... For Guy, there's not really a lot you can do. Hager and Dean both have actually much better times fighting this. Whoops. So right here I'm doing dashing jump attacks. As soon as I hit the ground, I'm dashing again and then doing a jump attack. Look. Sometimes if you do the inputs too fast, you can get the Super Joy, that jumping spinning kick. You can get it either by pressing A or by pressing the jump and attack buttons together. So by trying to do a jumping dash attack as fast as possible, sometimes you'll hit both buttons together and get the Super Joy instead. Alright, so round 5 has one of the biggest single time losses you can do in this run, if not the single biggest time loss you can do in this run. If I make one particular mistake, I'll lose several minutes. And I'll explain that right in a moment here. So in the background there, you might notice that little indentation. You can actually enter that indentation. It's one of the route choices, and it brings you to the stage 4 that we skipped. So it's not really a great idea to go there. The benefit for doing that is just to get to the end of this screen. Like it takes us to the next screen. So it's a pretty drastic detour. And unfortunately, while there is a lot of interesting routing and that ability to go back to stage 4, there's no ability, no matter what route you take, to fight all of the bosses. No matter what, you'll miss, either you won't fight Kane, who is the boss we skipped, or in stage 3, or if you tried to go this way, or if you tried to go the default stage 3 route, then you wouldn't be able to fight Drake, the boss on the last stage. So this is where we would end up if I had taken that alternate route. Not really a great plan. So this is one of the few places that hunters show up, and they're not really dangerous usually because their attacks are very, very slow. But if they do hit me, they actually do a lot of damage. Like, I probably wouldn't die from this health, but I'd be at pretty critical health. Anyway, Fritz's pretty rare enemy type. They have no health. All they do is jump on and throw a grenade. Ideally, I want to kill all of them before they throw a grenade, because the game won't let me advance until their grenades explode. But, I don't know. It doesn't really matter a huge amount, especially in a marathon setting. Oh, so you, so there's multiple different ways to throw in this game, depending partially on your relative facing to the enemy, and also your inputs. So for facing towards an enemy, you can shoulder toss them or knee bash them like that. Facing away, I can do that throw where I can do a throw where I put the enemy on the ground and you can mash to hit them up to 3 times, which is Guy's most damaging throw. You can also do a suplex with Guy, but it's not really a good idea. It leaves Guy kind of vulnerable afterwards. So here's another routing thing. We're gonna go in this broken door. So here I have to be a little bit careful. If I were to go all the way back over to the left, it would send me back into the area I came here from, and I wouldn't be able to take this alternate route. So here, there's going to be 4 computer mainframes in the background, and I need to make sure I break all 4 of them. So there's the first 2. And that's good. Yep. So there's a setup there where I try and stand and punch, but it depends on what the May does, and she decided to throw me, so I didn't get to set this up. Yeah, there's the backdrop suplex thing. So anyway, because we broke all 4 of those computers, the stage ends instead of us going back into the stage and fighting the boss. So any percent of this game, which is really the only character or category that's well defined, any percent involves fighting as few of the bosses as possible, which is, you know, kind of an interesting thing for a beat 'em up, I guess. Yep, so Joe's, much like May's, have a throw that you can't really avoid in any realistic way while playing fast. Sometimes he's just gonna grab you. The only thing that's nice about fighting Joes is they don't actually have much of a standing animation. I haven't talked about this, but each enemy has their own standing animation that takes varying amounts of time. And so, depending on what enemy you're fighting determines what types of mistakes are costly. Like, against Joes, knocking them down is really not a particularly costly mistake, because you can just walk up, throw them, and they're not really much time lost. But enemies like Dirks, who are the bigger guys with claws on their hands. Oop, that was a silly mistake. They have a very long wake-up animation, so knocking them down is a relatively relatively costly mistake. Excuse my stuttering and stuff this morning. Did not get up very long ago. Yeah. Oh, okay. It's pretty hard to actually impact doors with that back throw, but because the situation was there, I just did it. But you can see I kind of was left vulnerable afterwards. So this door and the previous door, I enter and leave because it just ends the fight that you're in. Which means, which is faster than doing either of them. There's quite a few enemies in both those fights. That's pretty good luck. So there's, as in most beat-em-ups, there is a lot of luck involved in getting a really optimized time. You're at the mercy of enemies' AI and how they group up really desperately. So here's the elevator section. This is pretty affectionately known by a lot of people because there's a bunch of Joes in here. And I got thrown before the loading even finished, so that's pretty cool. There's faster ways to do this, but this is the fastest consistent way. Whoops. And sometimes it's not consistent anyway. And this is a place where Guy's back throw is really, really bad for him. Different characters do better or worse on this elevator, pretty much entirely based on their throws and where they hit. So Guy does fine as long as you keep getting his forward throw, but if you get a back throw on somebody, you tend to get put into a troublesome spot really quick. Yeah, there you can see how fast Joes get up. It looks like they're just lying on the ground and then you pick them up. So we're entering the final stretch of the game. So we're gonna get in a fight with a whole lot of maze here. We've been kind of playing this fight a little safe, and they're still kind of giving me shenanigans. I guess I didn't mention, your character will get up automatically, but if you mash buttons and directions, you'll get up faster, so it's something you pretty regularly have to do. Ideally, I want to group these two guys together pretty immediately. Oh, okay. I got the... So, this game kind of keeps track of your punch string for a long time. And, while the first punch of the first two punches of Guy's string are really good at stopping these guys' charges, the third and after very much so are not. So, what happened there is I had the punch stored for longer than I imagined. And then got hit for it. So, well, I mentioned earlier that enemies are very random in this game. They do tend to kind of telegraph what they're doing a little bit by what way they're moving relative to you. On doors, if they kind of are slowly backing up, they're going to do that chest bump charge, which is not too bad to stop. It's not like, in Final Fight 1, it can be really difficult to stop that charge, but this game, it's pretty lenient. Whoop. So there I was trying to just standing punch, and I rotated from walking forward to down at some point during it and got the special, which does not interrupt much of anything at that range. Alright, so that's the last of the normal sections of the game. All we've got left is the final boss. So I actually don't know, I don't know much about the scoring in this game, but I find it really interesting that I've never ended the game anywhere even close to having a point in the first digit. Alright, so this is Black. Ah, I had him there too, but I messed up the input. There we go. So yeah, Black is very fast. He outranges you and outprioritizes you with basically all of his attacks. But since we're Guy, we can do this. I do need to... I did actually let him out of the combo on purpose. If you combo him for his entire health bar, and that's time. If you combo him for his entire health bar, the game actually doesn't complete itself. It gets stuck. The flashing warning light. Flashing warning. This helicopter explosion sequence ends up getting stuck, and so you're just sitting there while explosions happen forever. We get to see Dean walk off into the sunset. Yeah, this game has multiple command moves. I use the fireball pretty regularly, which is a quarter circle forward. Most characters have a quarter circle forward move. Lucia has a couple different special moves, and a couple of characters have special grapples. Dean walks off into the sunset, never to be heard from again.